Using your smart speaker for this,
Okay, I've added cheese to your shopping list.
yeah, that's pretty smart. But shopping online with SuperValue? That's even smarter. Have the best produce hand-picked and delivered straight to your door. Download the SuperValue app now or shop online at supervalue.ie.
Hold on to your headphones and pour your favorite beverage. It's time for the Kickin or Stickin Fantasy Football Podcast. Now, fresh off the sidelines, your host, Matt McPeak.
Freaks and geeks, what is up? Welcome to the Week 9 edition of the Kickin or Stickin Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Matt McPeak. Thank you for joining me tonight. We got 4 teams on bye this week: the Eagles, the Rams, the Browns, and the Bengals. We got 12 games to get here, so let's dive right in. We got the Giants at the Washington Football Team. This one's pretty easy if you ask me. You're obviously going to start Terry McLaurin and Antonio Gibson. I don't think there's anybody else from Washington that you can look at. Maybe the tight end Logan Thomas. And then for the Giants, it's really just Darius Slayton and, again, maybe Evan Ingram. Tight end is just so it's horrible this year. So, I mean, you can pretty much throw a dart with anybody you want from week to week. But Evan Ingram has been coming on a little bit. We saw him start getting a lot of rushing attempts, and he was I'm pretty sure he led the team in targets last week for the Giants too. So maybe this is a game you can start him because Washington is pretty bad against tight ends. The next game is the Bears at the Titans. This is actually one of my podcast picks, one of the picks later on in the show. We're obviously starting Allen Robinson. David Montgomery has a top 10 matchup here for running backs. The Titans are more generous to running backs in the passing game than they are on the ground, but David Montgomery has at least 5 targets in 5 straight games. The Titans running game has been coming on as of late, but if Montgomery's going to see 5 targets every week, then you pretty much have to start him with the way that the running back position is right now. So many guys hurt. Then you got Jimmy Graham, was a big disappointment last week in a really good matchup in a revenge game, and only caught 2 of his 7 targets for 13 yards. The Titans are middle of the pack against tight ends, and Graham is still one of only 5 players with 10 or more red zone targets. So I'm going to say you can start Jamie Graham, just like I was saying about Evan Ingram. He's another guy you can throw the darts with. Derrick Henry's an obvious start. A.J. Brown, you're starting. Jonnu Smith is also a start for me, despite his 4 catches in his last 3 games combined, which me just saying scares me. But the Bears are 7th in receptions allowed and 8th in receiving yards allowed to tight ends. So he's got another plus matchup here. Hopefully he can get back on track for us. The next game, Lions at the Vikings. This is another one of my podcast picks, so stay tuned. This is a particularly special pick, or special game for one of the players involved, and that is Adrian Peterson. Why is it a special game for Adrian Peterson?
Revenge.
Obviously, AP, when he goes into the Hall of Fame, he'll probably be rocking that purple, the Vikings uniform there, but the Vikings running back that you want to play now is Dalvin Cook. Should have another good game. Maybe not 4 touchdowns like he had last game, but the Lions have allowed the 8th most rushing yards to running backs and 8 rushing touchdowns already. So Cook might be the high-priced DFS guy this week that's worth it. You got Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Both had almost identical stat lines last week with 3 catches for 4 targets for 27 yards, which is discouraging, but that's going to happen when your running back is putting up 200 plus yards and scoring every drive. So keep both of those guys in your lineups. I wish I could say start DeAndre Swift, but he had a pretty crappy game last week. Kerryon Johnson got the red zone target last week, plus Of the 7 teams that have not allowed a receiving touchdown to a running back this year, the Vikings have allowed the second lowest yards per reception. So, and obviously if DeAndre Swift is going to put up numbers in this game, it's most likely going to be in the passing game. So, like I said, the Vikings are tough against pass-catching running backs, so I'm sitting DeAndre Swift, and I'm sitting Adrian Peterson, but despite the obvious
revenge.
Gotta sit him. He's just not getting the work, man. He's too old. Kenny Golladay is doubtful right now. Marvin Jones should have another good game if Golladay misses. He scored twice last week and had 80 yards the week before that, so I like Marvin Jones this week. Panthers at the Chiefs. Christian McCaffrey is a must start if he plays. It seems like he is going to play. I don't really care if he's on a snap count or if he's only going to play on third down or whatever it happens to be. If McCaffrey is active, you're going to play him. DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson are both wide receiver 2s in a game that they should be trailing and see a bunch of targets. This Panthers D is pretty horrible last year, and at least the run defense was absolutely atrocious last year, and it's still not all that great this year. So you can start Clyde and Le'Veon Bell again. I know they both had pretty crappy games last week, and I think it's actually been 2 or 3 bad games for Clyde here. But you got to figure that eventually it's going to turn around, and this hopefully is the matchup that happens. Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are also obvious starts. Texans at the Jaguars. So Will Fuller was not traded to the Packers, which is good news. So we're starting him, obviously. David Johnson is a guy I'm not excited about starting, but he's definitely worth an RB2 spot. He had over 100 total yards when these two teams played in Week 5. Brandon Cooks had 3 good games going into their bye, which they're coming off of the bye this week. He should have another solid game against this really bad Jaguars defense. Only the Falcons have allowed more tight ends to score than the Jaguars. They've been getting beat by tight ends for big plays at least once every single game. Darren Fells has the second highest yards per reception on the Texans, a team that loves to throw the ball deep, so I think that's pretty significant. Fells is second on the team in touchdowns behind only Will Fuller as well, so he he did absolutely nothing in his last start in Week 7, but he scored in each of the 2 games before that. So Fells might just make my tight end touchdown scorer ticket. For the Jags, it's James Robinson, DJ Shark, and I guess if you're hurting Laviska Shenault and Keelan Cole, hopefully them coming out of the bye, they can get the ball distributed to everybody. I'm pretty sure the backup quarterback's going to be starting here, a rookie, so not sure how much I really want to trust these third and fourth options in the Jaguars offense, but like I said, James Robinson and DJ Shark should be just fine. Ravens at the Colts. It's a special game for these Baltimore fans because obviously the Colts used to play there. Playing Mark Andrews has definitely been frustrating. We drafted him as a top 4 tight end to avoid the headache of tight ends, but he just hasn't been as consistent as he was last year. But you have to keep him in your lineup because he is still the focal point of that offense, at least the passing game of the offense. Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins are both good starts if you ask me. Mark Ingram is most likely going to miss this game. The Colts have allowed the 3rd fewest fantasy points to running backs, but it does not matter in this matchup. The Lamar Jackson effect makes any running back that's getting 12 to 15 carries a must start. Jonathan Taylor had a pretty terrible game last week and a great matchup with the Lions, only 2 yards per carry on 11 carries, while Jordan Wilkins had over 100 total yards on 20 carries, and he scored. Nyheim Hines also had 2 receiving touchdowns, so very disappointing game for Jonathan Taylor. I have Taylor in a dynasty league, and if we didn't have multiple flex spots, I'd probably be sitting him. I think I would sit him this week in a normal league if you have the other options. But, like I said earlier, there's just so many dudes hurt at the running back position that it's kind of hard to get away from a guy that is going to be running behind the best offensive line in football, whether it's getting 10 touches or 20 touches. Nyheim Hines is a start only in full PPR leagues, if you ask me. I like that coming out of the bye last week for them. Hines was second on the team in targets in a game that they were leading for 3 quarters. For him to get that many targets and to lead the team in targets when they were ahead is pretty significant, if you ask me. Trey Burton is another interesting guy this week. The Ravens have given up a touchdown to a tight end in each of the last 2 games. Fun little stat here: 5 of the Colts' 10 receiving touchdowns this year have gone to their tight ends. 3 of them have gone to Nyheim Hines. So only 2 of the 10 touchdowns have gone to wide receivers. So that's pretty significant. That kind of tells you what Phillip Rivers is looking for when he drops back. Burton has 3 touchdowns in his last 2 games, with 2 of them rushing. I think he's the most athletic of the 3 Colts tight ends. Jack Doyle also scored last week. He played the most snaps of the 3 tight ends, but he saw the fewest targets. So that tells me he's the blocking guy. So if I'm going to get these the streaks to continue here in Week 9, I would bet that it's going to be Burton that gets the touchdown over Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox. The next game is the Seahawks at the Bills. I'm not sure as of now who is going to start at running back here, but whoever is in line for the lion's share of the work is definitely worth a start for the Seahawks. The Bills have allowed the 5th most rushing yards to running backs. Last week, with no Chris Carson or Carlos Hyde, DJ Dallas had 2 touchdowns, and so I will be playing him if Chris Carson is out. If Carson plays, I'm not playing DJ Dallas. You can't start a guy who's in a rotation of 3. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett are obvious starts. I'm sitting Devin Singletary. He had his season high in rushing yards last week, but the Seattle run D has gotten a lot better from the beginning of the season, and Singletary is going to continue to lose work to this rookie, Zach Moss, who I would much rather have than Devin Singletary, but I wouldn't start either of them unless I had to in this game. I think it's going to be nothing but passing in this game. Stephon Diggs and John Brown are must-starts in this game as well. The Broncos at the Falcons, another game that is one of my podcast picks, so make sure you stay tuned in there, folks. Phillip Lindsay was the much better running back last week, but I think this is a game where we can start both Denver running backs. Lindsay looks like he's the more explosive back, but Melvin Gordon has had 26 targets to Phillip Lindsay's 4 targets. The Falcons have actually been a pretty good rush defense, but they've allowed the 2nd most receptions and the 4th most receiving yards to running backs, so their linebackers cannot cover running backs, so I like both Bronco running backs this week. Jerry Judy might be worthy of a start here. He saw 10 targets last week, only caught 4, but hit his season high for receiving yards. He led the team in targets, so he's leading the team in targets so far. And I believe I saw a stat that he leads the league in air yards as well, which is also significant. That tells you that he's running routes deep down the field. The Falcons give up the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers, plus the Falcons have allowed the most explosive pass plays to wide receivers this year. So Judy should be able to connect for a deep ball or 2 in this game. I'm going to be getting Jerry Judy into my DFS lineups, and I'll be looking at Jerry Judy's longest reception prop as well. Noah Fant is also a must start this week. No team has allowed more touchdowns to tight ends than the Falcons. I also like the rookie tight end there. I'm not even going to attempt to say his name, but I remember, when they drafted him along with these wide receivers this year, this offseason, I was like, dude, there's no way that they're not going to use this huge guy. I think he's like 6'9" or something. We saw him go up and high point a ball last week and score a touchdown. So I'd also be interested in looking at his props as well. Julio Jones is an obvious start. Calvin Ridley is a must start if he plays. He's questionable right now. It's killing me because I have him in like 5 freaking leagues. So I'm really hoping he suits up. And in this matchup, I'm going to sit Todd Gurley. I know I said it last week that eventually I think Todd Gurley is going to hit a wall, and I think this is the game where that wall, he at least starts to hit that wall this week. The next one is the Raiders at the Chargers, another one of my podcast picks. Josh Jacobs is a solid running back. 1 this week. He had 100 total yards and a touchdown with 5 catches in his only game last year against the Chargers. LA has allowed the 9th fewest rushing yards this year, but Jacobs had his season high in carries and yards last week. He is their guy, so coming out of the bye, no, they're not coming out of the bye. They just played the The Brownies. He is their guy, though, so don't get discouraged by this matchup. Darren Waller had his second lowest scoring game last week, and he was held in check in both of the games last year against the Chargers. 2 of Waller's 3 games last year with less than 40 yards were against the Chargers. Derwin, the tight end eraser James, who I like to call, was active in one of those games. He did not play in the other. Waller is still a start because of his consistent 8 targets a game and the occasional double-digit target games that he has. But don't expect a big game here because, like I said, the Chargers are pretty good against tight ends, and I would stay away from him in DFS at least. Hunter Renfro caught all 4 of his targets and scored last week in a great matchup for slot receivers against the Bills, but he still only had 26 yards. He only went over 50 yards twice this year, and he's only scored twice as well. So I'm going to have to sit Hunter Renfro this week. Justin Jackson had a great game last week, 140 total yards on 17 catches. 17 catches, that would be pretty cool. But it was 17 carries, and 3 catches on 5 targets. And that was against a top 10 defense in the Broncos. So I think Justin Jackson has solidified himself as the number 1 guy there while Austin Eckler's out. And maybe even when Eckler does return, they kind of use him as more of just the pass-catching guy. And maybe Justin Jackson keeps the majority of the carries. Tremaine Pope has leapfrogged Josh Kelly in that pecking order for running back touches. He had 10 carries and 7 targets last week. So if you need an RB this week, Pope is not the worst ad on a Sunday morning. Only 4 teams allowed more touchdowns to running backs this year than the Raiders. Sit Josh Kelly. He's just, like I said, Tremaine Pope's getting the touches now. Keenan Allen's a must start. Mike Williams had his second blow-up game last week. He had 50 yards in each of the 2 games last year against the Raiders. The Raiders have the 7th highest explosive pass play rate allowed to wide receivers. So they are giving up big plays to wide receivers. That's what Mike Williams does. Last week was Williams' second most targets this year. So maybe the rookie QB and Mike Williams are starting to get something going here. Hunter Henry has been a huge disappointment this year. Only 1 touchdown so far, under 40 yards in his last 4 games. The Raiders have been one of the tougher matchups this year against tight ends. So I'm sitting Hunter Henry, and in the leagues that I have multiple tight ends, I have him in 3 leagues, I think, or either 2 or 3 that I have either Hayden Hurst or Mike Gesicki. It's not a good year for me with tight ends. I seem to have picked 3 of the biggest headaches at the position. But yeah, I'll be trying to shop him to the George Kittle owner who unfortunately George Kittle's out for the rest of the year, which sucks because he is one of the most fun players to watch. I legitimately think that he could line up at any one of the offensive line positions for the New York Football Jets and do better than the guys that we got right now. He's probably better than half of the offensive linemen in the league. But yeah, like I said, hopefully the name value can get me some kind of return for Hunter Henry. Steelers at Cowboys. I'll make this quick. Start James Conner, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, and I guess throw a dart with Deontay Johnson and hope to get one of the 3 games that he's had this year where he had double-digit targets, and hopefully you don't get one of the 3 games he had this year with 3 or less targets. He has been just the range of outcomes that could come from Deontay Johnson is kind of amazing here. Zeke Elliott, I think, is the only Cowboy you can even consider starting, and even he's a stretch against this Steelers run defense, but he's still at least a mid-level RB2. The Cowboys offense is just complete garbage without Dak Prescott. I'm sure he's miserable not playing football right now, but there's got to be a small part of him that's smiling from ear to ear knowing that everyone is seeing just how incredibly pathetic this team is without Dak. So rest up, get better, and so we can get you back on the football field there, Dak Prescott. Next game, Dolphins at Cardinals. This is an interesting game for Kenyon Drake.
Revenge.
However, he is questionable going to this game. Most likely he's not going to play. Myles Gaskin is out, so it's going to be just Matt Breida and Jordan Howard. I'm really not all that interested in playing either of them, but I do like Breida a whole lot better then I like Jordan Howard. Breida will be more active in the passing game, and it's a decent matchup for a pass-catching running back. The Cardinals are allowing over 8.5 yards per reception to running backs. The Dolphins only throw the ball 22 times last week in Tua Tagovailoa's first start. They ran the ball 23 times, got a lot of help with the touchdown from their defense and another one from their return game. I don't think they're going to really be able to get away with throwing the ball 22 times again this game, especially with Gaskin being out. Devontae Parker, only 2 targets last week. He converted 1 into a touchdown, so I'm still starting Parker. He's the best option in the passing game for them, so I'm starting him in a non-PPR league this week. Mike Gesicki continues to screw me. Last week, Gesicki's 4th game with 3 or less targets and 1 or fewer receptions. So the Cardinals have actually been pretty good against tight ends this year, so I'm sitting Mike Gesicki. Chase Edmonds is the must-start for me in this game. Obviously, he's going to be getting a lot of love from people in fantasy leagues this week with Kenyon Drake either out or extremely limited. Edmonds should have a very solid game. The Dolphins are middle of the pack against running backs, but we've seen it now for 2 years with the Lamar Jackson effect. To simply put, mobile quarterbacks just help running backs a lot. And, with why can't I think of his name? The quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray, who's an extremely mobile, fast guy. He's going to help Chase Edmonds, going to help open up those holes. So I'm starting him. DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk are also both starts for me. We got 2 more games left here. Saints at Buccaneers. Alvin Kamara's obvious start. If Michael Thomas plays, he's an obvious start. Jared Cook is only a start to me if Michael Thomas is out. We just saw the Buccaneers allow Evan Ingram to have one of his best games this year, but Ingram is much better of an athlete than Jared Cook. Cook scored a touchdown for the 3 straight games last week. But 4 touchdowns in the last 5 games. Every one of Jared Cook's touchdowns this year have come when there's no Michael Thomas. So like I said, if Michael Thomas plays, you can't play Jared Cook. Or maybe you can. I don't know. Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones. I said it last week. I think we just start both of them and hope that these guys score. I think Fournette has the higher floor because of his pass-catching chops, and he's a best pass protector. But they are both worth playing. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Antonio Brown, and Gronkowski too, are all pretty much starts in this game. Last one here, Monday Night Football. We got the Patriots at my New York Football Jets. Another game that I don't understand why it's on Monday night, but whatever. I couldn't have been more wrong about this Patriots game last week with them and the Bills. I said don't start any of the running backs, and they all had pretty good games, except for James White, the guy that I said you could possibly start. Damian Harris should be a good start. A lot better in non-PPR leagues than in PPR. He's got only 2 catches on the season, but he had over 100 yards last week with a touchdown on 16 carries. The Jets are in the top 10 in rushing yards allowed, so yeah, I'm starting Damian Harris. James White is a start in full PPR leagues for me. For 1 last week, the Jets have allowed the 6th most receptions to running backs. White has only had 5 targets over the last 2 weeks, but he had 17 targets in the 2 games before that, so I like both of the Patriots running backs this week. I'll be looking at James White's reception prop. Jacoby Myers last week was only the 4th time a Patriots wide receiver had double-digit targets this year. Myers was only able to turn it into 58 yards, but the targets are telling me I think he's going to see the majority of the targets again this week. So against this horrible Jets defense, I think you can start him. For the Jets, I think Jamison Crowder is, again, the only Jet I'd be willing to play, and that's really only in PPR leagues. He's still questionable as of right now, so we'll have to see if he's able to suit up. So let's take a hot minute here and get to the podcast picks.
All right.
We're back here. Let's get into the podcast picks for Week 9. Give me a second here. I got to move some of my notes around. All right, so hit on my road dog again last week. 8 straight road dogs. I went 5-4 overall. So still hovering right there around 60%, which is not too shabby, but I do want to hit 65 by the end of the season. I'd like to, if I can finish the year at 65%, I think that would say a lot about my ability to do this on the show. So let's get into it here. The Week 9 podcast picks. Seahawks -3 at the Bills. Russell Wilson is the MVP. Give it to him right now. The Seahawks are traveling east for the third time this year. They won both of those games at Atlanta and at Miami. Seattle is scoring 27 points a game. The Seattle defense is starting to really come on. At least the run defense is solid. And if Jamal Adams plays, which I'm pretty sure he was a full participant in practice, I don't see Buffalo putting up any more than 20 points. The Bills just beat New England for the first time in a very long time. And they still don't really look all that great. They were able to run the ball last week, which helped the passing game, but I don't think Devin Singletary and Zach Moss will both have over 80 rushing yards again this week. I think the Seahawks win this game by at least 3 points. But like usual, I would buy this game down at least a half point so you win with a field goal, or just, play the alternate line and have them win by a touchdown. My next pick is one that I'm somewhat worried about, but I'm still going to roll with it. I was thinking about changing it before I hit the record button, but I'm going to roll with it. The Steelers -13.5 at Dallas. The Cowboys are the only team that hasn't covered the spread yet this year. Even my really bad New York Football Jets have covered the spread. I don't think this is the week that it happens for the Cowboys. They're on their fourth quarterback this year. Pittsburgh defense is one of the best. I honestly think the Steelers defense could outscore the Cowboys offense this week. 13.5 is a huge number to lay on the road, but the Cowboys are just so bad. They've only scored a total of 22 points in the last 3 games combined. I think they get 3 field goals at best. And I think the Steelers score at least 3 touchdowns. Maybe they get a field goal or 2. So I think the Steelers can keep it over 14 points for us. I think they jump out to a big lead, and the defense just abuses this Cowboys' bad offensive line and whoever starts at quarterback. And my third pick against the spread is going to be the Vikings, -4.5 at home versus the Lions. Oh, yeah, I forgot I had that drop. Matthew Stafford could miss this game. He's on the COVID-19 coronavirus list. Detroit has allowed over 130 rushing yards per game. We just saw what Dalvin Cook did to the Packers, over 200 total yards and 4 frickin' touchdowns. I think the Vikings are better than their record says. I know they have a very young and inexperienced secondary, but it's if Stafford misses and Chase Daniels is the starting quarterback with no Kenny Golladay, I really like the Vikings at home to win by at least 5 points. My over for the week is going to be the Raiders at the Chargers, over 51.5. The Chargers have scored 32 points a game over their last 3 games, and on average 25.5 points a game over the year. The Raiders have averaged 26.5 points a game, so I think if both offenses show up, they should be able to get it to or to get 52 points. Both teams are in the bottom half of the league in points allowed. Hopefully we see an old school AFL type of game with the ball just flying all over the football field. My under for the week is going to be the Chicago Bears and the at the Tennessee Titans, under 46.5. I might buy this up to 48 just because I like the roundness of that 48. I feel like we see more games finish at a even 48 than we do at a 46 or 45. So Chicago's defense is elite, and their offense is not. The Bears might be down a handful of starting offensive linemen in this game. David Montgomery has had his best game rushing last week, but I think Tennessee's run D is starting to come around. They gave up 118 rushing yards to the Bengals last week, but 3 games before that, they held their opponents to under 100 total rushing yards. The Titans have had they do have one of the more explosive offenses in the league, but I think the Bears defense does enough to offset that really good Titans offense to keep this game under 47. If the Titans offense scares you enough to get off of this under, then just take the Bears team total under 20.5 because I do not think the Bears go over 17 points at all. I think I'm honestly more confident in that Bears team total under than I am in the under for the game. My TD scorer props for this week. Why do I only have 2? Well, I got Dalvin Cook. We saw him score 4 touchdowns last week. The Lions have allowed 12 touchdowns to running backs this year. I think the Vikings will continue to feed Dalvin Cook, so I like him to score. James Robinson, Jaguars are coming off of a bye, and a rookie quarterback is going to start. With that quarterback, I think the Jaguars try and focus on the running game. They're calling for some wind and rain right now in Jacksonville, I believe, this weekend. So, so give me the undrafted rookie from Illinois State to score. And then I must have not hit the save button when I did my third tight end scorer of the day this morning, but I'm pretty sure I had DK Metcalf because he's a beast and he pretty much scores every week. If there's one player in the league that I'm going to bet on to score every week, it's probably going to be Travis Kelce and DJ Metcalf. He's just he's on another level right now, and with the MVP of the league, Russell Wilson, throwing in the ball, I think Metcalf scored twice last week and had like 12 catches over 100 yards again. He's a monster. So let's get into the road dog of the week, baby.
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody.
And my road dog for week 9. Let's keep this rolling, guys. I'm 8-0 right now. I want to keep this up. 8-0, 5 of the 8 have won outright. So maybe we can get another one here. I'm going with the Denver Broncos getting 4 points at the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta is 2-5 against the spread this year, and Denver is 5-2. They're 3-0 against the spread on the road. Denver had a big game, big comeback win last week in the division. They've had one of the tougher schedules so far this year, starting with the Titans, the Steelers, and the Buccaneers as their first 3 games. I think their defense is underrated. I know they've lost a lot of defensive linemen. There's a good chance Calvin Ridley misses this game with his foot injury, but I think the Broncos can carry over that big comeback win and bring it with them to Atlanta. I know Atlanta has been playing a lot better since they fired their head coach, but yeah, I just think this is going to be. I think the Broncos are going to come in and make it tough for the Falcons at home. So give me the Broncos getting 4 points. You know, we only need them. The Falcons can win with a field goal, and we can still cover here. So give me the Broncos +4 as the road dog of the week for week number 9, and that's going to do it for the week 9 episode of the Kickin' or Stickin' Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. So make sure you check us out next week. And as always, may the fantasy gods be cruel to your opponents.
You have been listening to the Kickin' or Stickin' Fantasy Football Podcast. For more great episodes and information, follow us on social media and tune in every week. Kickin' or Stickin' is available on Google Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Alexa, Reach.tv, or your favorite podcast service. Kickin' or Stickin' is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. To find out more about this and other great shows on our network, visit us online at hcuniversalnetwork.com today. Fantasy football is fun, but gambling addiction destroys lives. If you or someone you love suffers from gambling addiction, please do not be afraid to seek help. The National Council on Problem Gambling operates the National Problem Gambling Helpline Network. Contact them today at 1-800-522-4700. Thank you for tuning in to the Kickin' or Stickin' Fantasy Football Podcast. Please remember to play responsibly and always look for your man downfield.
Audio via your smart speaker. A wonderful hands-free experience, leaving you more time to unwrap a miniature whisper. Pick up a box of Cadbury Heroes today. Stay at home and share them with your family or friends. Sometimes it's the little things that bring us together.
What does your van say about your business? The all-new Toyota Pro A City says ambitious. It says hard-working, taking 2 Euro pallets. And with Toyota Professional Services backing you up, dedicated to the Pro A City from just €15,163 ex-VAT. Contact your dealer today about our all-inclusive lease solution. Toyota, built for a better world. Price excludes delivery and related charges. Lending criteria, T's and C's apply. Finance provided by way of lease agreement by Toyota Financial Services Ireland DAC.